The UTEP men's basketball team will be without their coach when they take the court tomorrow. Tim Floyd has been suspended for what the league calls a violation of the sportsmanship policy. Floyd received 2 technicals after arguing a call last night during the game against Louisiana Tech, and he even shoved one of his own players, Irvin Morris, and he was ejected from the game but did not leave the arena. According to the conference's standard of conduct, a delay or contrary action following an ejection will result in an automatic suspension from the following contest. And now the Miners are going from Ruston, Louisiana to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where they will take on Southern Miss without Coach Floyd. Game time is set for 6 p.m. El Paso time. And joining us now is our very own Darren Hunt, and you spent many years covering UTEP and saw plenty of ejections. What do you think this means for this coming up game? And I know we both have different views of what that ejection meant. So what is this going to do to the team?
I think they're fine for Saturday with Phil Johnson. He's a former head coach at San Jose State, and he's their assistant coach. If he can stay in the game, because we've seen actually games where Tim and Phil were ejected a few years ago at a game at East Carolina. Both of them were ejected, and they went down to the third coach. But I think they're fine. Southern Miss, not one of the best teams in the conference. Last night was for first place for UTEP. Unfortunately, that didn't work out too good. But they still have a shot at a top 4 seed that would give them a bye in the coming up tournament in Birmingham, and if they can win that tournament, they of course get an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. But I think they're down to that now. I think they're going to have to win the tournament. The at-large is probably not a possibility. And you know, if you had told me 5 years ago that Tim Floyd would be the coach and UTEP wouldn't get in an NCAA tournament in those 5 years, I'd have told you were crazy. But that's what they face, and their backs are to the wall at this point. What Tim did last night, you can YouTube Tim Floyd ejections, and you can find about 5 or 6 of them just along the same lines. He's a very fiery coach. He's always very animated, very different from Coach Haskins, who basically just had to stare at an official, and I think he put fear into them. They were afraid of him. They would stay away from him for the most part, but Coach Haskins wasn't the type to go chase people down, maybe because he was such a large man. He wasn't going to run around the court like that. But what Tim did last night probably deserved the suspension. When I went back and looked at the East Carolina situation 4 years ago, he was only reprimanded for that, and he didn't leave the floor immediately. But the conference commissioner actually, a quote that I found in a release from them, when a coach is ejected, I expect them to leave the floor. Coach Floyd's actions were unacceptable. I made our expectations rather clear going forward, and I do not expect this to happen again. It happened again last night. It results in the suspension now. And basically, Tim quoted in the Times today saying 2 years ago that they actually instituted a new rule where you must leave the floor immediately. Things are very different than when he first started coaching. He said almost 30 years ago. They are quicker on the trigger with things like that. He was going to get his money's worth for being ejected last night. True. And things
go out with a bang if
he was, and things went a little too far, and then it resulted in a push of a player.
Right. So we know why he got ejected, but what happened right after he got ejected was, as he was making his way out, one of his players tried to hold him back, and this is where we kind of, I look at it as his player just trying to, hey, coach, calm down. But you're saying that it could also be taken.
Well, I think sometimes you know, when someone breaks something up like that or holds someone, it makes things look worse than they really are. Tim was going to get ejected, but he was going to get his money's worth and get his mouthful to the give a mouthful to the official. Unfortunately, when someone grabs you, it almost makes it look like it's a physical altercation.
Right.
And he reacted probably poorly in pushing his own player. I'm sure he's addressed that probably within the team at this point, but he hasn't addressed it to the media or anyone else at this point. We'd like to hear something about what's been resolved in that term. We know that the conference office has suspended him for a game, but will UTEP have any actions because of his actions there? The player doing what he did, I don't disagree with you that the player was trying to help, but it does sometimes make the matter look worse than it is. Tim wasn't going to punch anybody. Right. I guarantee you that. He's smarter than that, but he was going to get his money's worth, and he's a very animated coach. Like I said, YouTube, Tim Floyd ejections, you can spend 2 hours sitting there having a lot of fun watching him go off on people from USC to Iowa State to UTEP. And, everywhere in between. The guy is a fiery coach. That's how he coaches.
Yeah, so definitely not the first time that we've seen this from Coach Floyd, but hopefully the Miners can pull it out on the road, and with Phil Johnson by their side, let's just hope he does, like you said, let's just hope he doesn't get kicked out.
Yeah, they need him on the floor, and Phil's been known for being a little fiery too. Was actually reprimanded earlier this year at Marshall for throwing a piece of paper on the floor, something you didn't mean to do. Tim and Phil are very much alike. That's probably why they get along so much. I appreciate that as a fan and as even a member of the media, the passion, but sometimes things do go a little too far.
All right, Darren, well, thank you for your insight. We appreciate it. We're back after the break with more news.